Hey folks, my name is Brian and welcome back to Poli Tic Talks. So the topic of today's video is going to be on the NRA in the United States. I want to say right up front that I'm going to stay away from any kind of moral judgments on the gun issue in America. That's not going to be what the topic of this video is about. I'm going to be talking about some of the legal trouble that the NRA has been facing lately and what that might mean for American politics. So let's get started. So, in April, the New York Times reported that the president of the National Rifle Association in the United States was stepping down following the opening of an investigation into the gun organization's tax-exempt status by the New York Attorney General. The resignation also comes after a power struggle within the NRA between the president and the chief executive officer of the organization. The Office of the Attorney General of the state of New York has declined to provide any details as to the nature of the investigation, other than what I mentioned at the top, that they are examining the group's tax-exempt status in the country. It's important to understand that the NRA is one of the largest political lobbying groups in the United States. According to Bloomberg, the NRA spent $9.6 million lobbying different lawmakers in the last 2 years. And that number is actually up from $5.9 million in the previous 2 years. The Bloomberg article that I just referenced for those figures states that even though the NRA has poured all that money into lobbying different lawmakers in the U.S., they have fairly few legislative accomplishments to show for it. That article was written a few months ago, I believe, and since then there have been some developments in the state of Florida. So the state legislature in Florida made headlines in the last few weeks when they passed a law saying that teachers now have the option to arm themselves in order to prevent or limit the damage occurring in school shootings. Once again, I'm not going to get into whether or not this is a good or a bad idea. I'm not making any kind of moral judgment in this particular piece. But one way or the other, this legislation that passed is good news for the National Rifle Association. Every time there's a new school shooting in the United States, the NRA tends to get a new round of bad press, rightly or wrongly. But interestingly, in February of 2018, a poll showed that over 70% of NRA members supported background checks for all gun sales in the United States. So that's interesting, right? Even though the NRA members themselves support the idea of background checks, members in the Senate and the House on a federal level that are funded or lobbied by the NRA can't even agree to vote in basic background checks for firearms sales in the United States. My analysis here in this next section will be open to debate, and feel free if you disagree with me to let me know down in the comments down below. But it seems to me that there's a disconnect between what the members of the NRA are actually pushing for and what they are asking their representatives that they are lobbying on a federal level to actually vote for. This might be what turns up in the state of New York's investigation into the NRA. And the important name to remember here, I think, might be Maria Butina. Maria Butina was one of the people that went to jail as a result of Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian influence in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Ms. Butina pled guilty to being a Russian agent attempting to influence the NRA from Russia, from Moscow. Now, I'm sure the NRA takes in money from all kinds of areas where they don't want to know where the money is coming from because it could look bad for them, and then they would have knowledge of where that money came from. But if the Russians are actually trying to get inside the NRA, then that might explain where some of the confusing interests are coming from in terms of what they're actually pushing for their representatives to do, even though the actual members, by a fairly large majority, support something as basic as background checks. And this next section is purely conjecture on my part, and I don't have any inside information on this whatsoever. But it seems to me that the president of the NRA resigning at almost the exact same time as the state of New York has opened an investigation into its books seems to me to be a bit suspicious. It might very well be that there was a power struggle and, you know, the president simply lost and was forced to resign. But I have a funny feeling that the state of New York may find some improprieties in the organization's books, and the president wanted to get out while the getting was good. Anyway, guys, that's it from me on this one. I have a feeling that I'm going to get lots of interesting comments on this one, as I am a Canadian talking about an issue that's fairly important to a lot of Americans. So feel free to let me know down in the description, or in the comments rather, what you think, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.